All right, welcome back to Adult Ed. Today we have Jen L. and her mother Betty, who is with us. They are co-volunteer coordinators at the International Wolf Center. And Jen, I know you've been there for 20 years, and
Mhm.
I know nothing about wolves, and so I would assume that I'm going to learn a lot here. I understand you're going to have a little bit of a presentation, and then we'll be able to ask some questions at the end. So I'm
Yep.
going to invite our folks as we get going here. If Jen mentions something and she says something that you're not sure about that, make a little note, write it down, and then we have time for all the questions at the end. You're also welcome to use the chat feature and put questions in the chat if you don't have anywhere to write. That way, I'll make sure to hit those questions when we get to that time at the end. Well, without further ado, Jen, we have some beautiful creatures here on these web cameras. I'm going to throw it over to you. What's going on? What you have for us?
Sounds good. So yep, like you said, I'm co-volunteer coordinator with my mother for the International Wolf Center. We are a education facility, so our main point is to teach people about wolves. So what we have is a lot of different scenarios to do that, and one of our big ones is our live cameras. We have an ambassador pack in Ely, and I will explain that a little bit more later. I've got some other pictures, but they are a captive pack that we have at the center. And we have, if I go up here, we don't see any wolves up here right now, but we have what we call our exhibit pack. And our exhibit pack right now only has 2 wolves, Axel and Grayson. And they are almost 5 years old. And then we have what we call our retired pack. So when we get wolves from another facility, all of the facilities, we get them from our USDA approved. When we get them from other facilities, they come to us as pups, and we take care of them through the end of their lives. So in the wild, the wolf has the option to disperse. And if they're an older wolf and don't want to be with that group anymore, they can leave. If they are a more dominant wolf and don't want to stay with that family pack any longer, they can leave and go try to make their own family pack or join another family pack. And so in captivity, they don't have those choices. So we have a curator and a wolf care team that take care of all our wolves, make sure that their health is good, make sure that everything's going okay with the way they interact with each other, make sure that everything's going good with the wolves. And with that wolf care team, the curator gets to decide if when an animal is to a point where they need to be retired, whether it be she doesn't feel that they want to be in the exhibit pack anymore and be part of that pack any longer, whether it be that the younger wolves are picking on them too much, so it's time for them to be off in another group area, or if it's just to the point where they may not want to be observed any longer. So there's all different reasons why we may retire a wolf. And what happens then is we have a separate section. So that first area that I showed you is about 1/4 acre big. And then we've got this section here, which is the east side. Then we've got the pack holding area, which is part of the retirement section also, and also used for pups sometimes when we have them in. And then we've got our back habitat, which you can see we've got Denali and Grizzer in retirement right now. And with that quick view, I couldn't tell which one that was. But it's one of those things where we take care of them through life. So we sometimes have wolves that didn't get along in the pack towards the end of their time in the pack. So we don't know if they'll get along in retirement. So we have the 3 separate enclosures so that we can have the wolves separate, or if we have a group that gets along okay or have gotten to a point where they get along okay at this point, then they can be in the same space. Denali and Grizzer were fine through all of their years. Towards the end of their years, it was actually Denali that was testing Grizzer. And so they weren't sure when they came into retirement if they'd be able to be in the same space. Once they got into retirement, Grizzer was retired many years ago, Denali just a few years back, actually just this last year. And when Denali got retired, they weren't sure. So they gave them some time in separate enclosures through the fence. And then once they kind of guessed whether they'd be okay together or not, they started testing time together. And now the 2 of them are together most of the time. But to go back into about us, so our mission statement is that we are here to advance the survival of wolf population by teaching about wolves, their relationship to wildlands, and the human role in their future. And the way we do that is with our website, with our ambassador wolves, with our facility that we have up in Ely and with our outreach program. So to start with, I'm going to talk a little bit about the ambassador wolves. We started out in 1989. Our building was not built until the early 90s. But in 89, we had a group of 4 wolves that we adopted, and they were all siblings. They were in a fenced-in enclosure in the summertime, and then they spent the winters in a fenced-in enclosure at the curator's home. She has many acres of land and had space to take them every winter. And so what happened then was these wolves were getting, as time went on with being away from the being on view in the wintertime and then being on view in the summertime, they were getting more skittish and not used to being around the public because they had all those months where they weren't around any people. So they decided that it would be best to find new homes for these 4 wolves. So they did find other facilities for them that were renowned facilities and sent them off to those places. And there is more information about that in the write-up if you ever want to go back and look at the website and get more details on that. But so those wolves did go to other facilities by the end of 92. Then we got our 1993 pack, and these are all the wolves we've had but are no longer with us. Our 93 pack was Kiana, Lucas, Lakota, and Mackenzie. And they were the 4 wolves we got in 93. So as they started to age, in the wild, a wolf pack is made up, like I said, of a family pack. So you've got your breeding pair, and then you have their offspring, usually at least definitely their pups and their yearlings. And then as wolves get older, again, like I said, they can make the choice to stay in the pack, and they would be like uncles and aunts and things like that. Or they can move off and create their own pack or join another pack. In the captivity, we don't have that choice. So as these wolves start to get older, and all of our wolves are spayed and neutered. So the wolves that we get, we do not allow to reproduce, partially because we get so many sibling groups, and also because of the fact that there is only an acre and a quarter of space in our exhibit pack. So with that acre and a quarter, the most wolves that we can have in there is 8 at a time. The most I believe we've ever had is 6. But with that being said, with these 4 wolves, they started to age. And a real wolf pack is different age levels. So what they decided to do then in 2000, well, right before 2000, as these wolves were getting on to 7, they're like, we need to do something to make this more pack-like. So then we got 2 more wolves. And at that point, we got Shadow and Malik. So in 2000, they adopted Shadow and Malik from another facility. And we usually get our wolves at about 10 days of age. Point behind the 10 days of age is their eyes are still closed, their ears are still closed. So when they open their eyes and their ears, the first things they're going to see then are humans. It's also the idea that that is the point where they start to make their connections. And with getting them at that young of an age, they're then connecting to the humans and connecting to that wolf care team that's going to be taking care of them for the rest of their lives. So they're not like dog pups where the dog pups need to stay with their parents until they're 8-10 weeks. They are able to go away from the parents at a younger age. Then in 2004, so in 2001 then is when my mom and I started visiting the center. I had visited once in the early 90s, and she had heard about it from another program that she had gone to. So we decided to take our first trip up in 2001. By the fall of 2002, we were volunteering at the state fair and then volunteering at other things as well. So then in 2004, we got Maya, Nisa, and, well, we don't see him here because he's still alive. We got Grizzer. And Grizzer and Denali are the 2 that you were seeing in those live feeds that you saw. So Grizzer and Maya and Nisa were the 3 that we got, and that was the first year that my mom and I were actually part of the pup care team. They get volunteers that actually pay to volunteer that come up and are able to help take care of the wolves. We help show, we spend 24 hours with the wolves. We take the time with the wolves then to feel their ears and to feel their feet and do different things, because like with their ears, they need to put fly ointment on them in the summertime. And in the wintertime, sometimes we feel their feet so that in the wintertime when they're adults, they're used to that, so that they can then have the ice balls, if they get any in their feet, pulled out by the curator and by the wolf care team. So then, and the pup team is only there for the pup time while they are in a separate enclosure from the adults. Once they go in with the adults in our enclosures, it is only the wolf care team, the paid staff, that is able to go in and help with that. And then, so that was 2004. In 2008, we got Aiden and Denali. So they are a brother pair that came to us from another facility. Oh, and I did not mention, my apologies. Maya, Nisa, and Grizzer are Great Plains wolves. There are 5 subspecies of the wolf, of the gray wolf. And with the gray wolf, there's the Great Plains subspecies, the Rocky Mountain subspecies or Northwestern subspecies, sorry, my apologies, the Arctic subspecies, and then there's an Eastern timber wolf that they're not sure if it's a subspecies anymore or if it's his own type of wolf. And then there's the Mexican gray wolf. So for those 5 types of gray wolves that are in the United States, the only ones that are not, like I said, the Eastern timber, they're saying might be a different type. So they don't want to intertwine those. And then the Mexican gray is still on a reintroduction program. So with that reintroduction program, you're not able to have any of them in captivity that are not going to be used within that reintroduction program. So the 3 types of wolves we have that we try to cycle through now are the Great Plains, the Arctic, and the Northwestern wolf. So Maya, Nisa, and Grizzer are all Great Plains wolves. Aiden and Denali are Northwestern wolves, which are over in the Rocky Mountain area. And then, and Malik and Shadow from the 2000 litter are Arctic wolves. So they're from the Canadian tundra, from Northern Canada. And then, so that was those. And then in 2012, we got Bolts and Luna, and they are not siblings. They had different birth dates. They did come from different parents, but we got them from the same facility. So those 2 came in 2012. And then in 2016, we got the 2 wolves that we have now, and they are the Arctics. They are Grayson and Axel, and they are a sibling group. They are 2 brothers. Last year, we were supposed to get another set of pups. With COVID, they decided to hold off because they didn't want that many volunteers coming in. They couldn't decide at the time, with it being in March, all of a sudden they weren't sure if they wanted to have just the wolf care team taking care of the pups and not have the pup care team come in. So they were trying to work through all of that. So they decided to wait. So now this spring, we are getting more wolves. And they're hoping to get 3 wolves this spring, with 1 female and 2 males if they can from the litter that they get it from. So that is our ambassador pack. So like I say, right now we've got the 2 in the exhibit pack, and then we've got the 2 that are back in those 3 retired enclosures. So the other thing we have is our facility. And our facility is up in Ely, and that's where the ambassador wolves are. They have their enclosures there. This is the building, or the outside of the building. At the facility, we have, it used to be called the Wolves and Humans. Mom, do you remember the name of it now? She needs to unmute.
Probably muted. Yeah.
There we go. Say that again, Jen.
Do you remember the name of the exhibit now? It used to be Wolves and Humans.
Oh, no, I don't.
Okay, that works. So we have, it's like a little museum space. And the way the Wolf Center started was that the Science Museum and Dr. David Meach, who was the founder of the Wolf Center, created a wolf, became a museum, but like a wolf setup that they had at the Science Museum, a display that they had there. And the Science Museum had it travel for a little while. And then it was a choice of whether they wanted to find a permanent home for it or if it was going to go into storage somewhere. And Dr. Meach decided he wanted to try to find a place. So he started looking at different cities. They looked at about 5 or 6 different cities around Minnesota and ended up with Ely. And they built the center then, and then went forward with working with the wolves. So it used to be the Wolves and Humans. They decided to update it, so we now have a different little museum space in there. We have a theater, which does movies. We play different wolf movies every hour throughout the day. We have the ambassador pack that people can observe. We also have a child play area, and then we also do classes. So they do some, and they do programs in the amphitheater. So they'll do programs about wolves, about moose, about the North Woods, different things like that. And then when they do classes, you can do like a family weekend, you can do lots of different programming that they have. And a lot of that is here on the website. But there's one picture of the building. There's another picture of the building. The point of this was to look like wolf ears. And then the part that gets most people interested is here. Like I say, I showed you the video cameras of the wolves in the space. Here's actually people on one side of the window, And the point of our pup, the 3 months of the pups being with humans instead of being in with the wolves right away, is to get that socialization period. So they've got 3 months of human socialization and then go in with the wolves and then are still dealing with the humans that come in every day to check on them, but are actually spending more time with the other wolves. But the humans that go up and visit the center get the opportunity to see the wolves and actually get very close to the wolves because the wolves are comfortable enough to come all the way up to the windows. So there's a sample of that. Then the other thing we do is outreach. So some of the different programs we have, we do video conferencing. We had a group or a program called Wolves at Your Door, where we had outreach people that actually went out to the schools and did programming and talked about the wolves and explained different parts about wolves and how they live and how they grow and all that sort of stuff. And then, but with COVID, that stopped at the moment. But they also they did schools, they did libraries, they did state parks. So we've got a lot of different ways that we try to outreach to the public. And then also, like I mentioned earlier, we have a state fair booth. So we do a booth at the state fair every year, and we are right outside the DNR building. So where the fish pond is, you just go straight to the building from the fish pond, and we're usually to the left of that door. So we usually have people there morning to night that are talking about wolves. We've got wolf pelts, we've got different artifacts that people can touch and feel and see. And then we're there to answer any questions for people. So, and then we do other booths as well around the cities throughout the year, depending, but the state fair is the biggest one we do. And then we also, like I said, have the website, which is where we actually get the majority of the people learning about us. This is where I grabbed most of the stuff that I just showed you. So we've got the wolf information, talks about different wolves, talks about wolves of the world. There are wolves all over the world. They're trying to reintroduce them in Japan. They're up in Norway, Finland. They have them over in Portugal. And all of those wolves are Canis lupus. So that is the gray wolf. And then from there, they have smaller subspecies. There is one other wolf called Canis rufus, and that is the red wolf. And the only place that that wolf is in right now in North Carolina. They had been down in Texas at one point. They did have a range, they believe, of the southeastern portion of the United States. But they went almost into extinction, and they pulled all the ones that they could at that point into captivity and have been now trying to reintroduce them. So they've had a SSP, which is a species survival program going to try to bring the red wolf back. The problem with the red wolf is that they also, when they're in the wild, because of their size, they're a smaller wolf, so sometimes they will breed with coyotes. So it's really hard to keep that straight lineage and figure out who's the red wolf and who's the red wolf coyote. But then we've got our wolves. So some of the information that I went through about the different wolves that we have, the videos. We also have a YouTube channel that our curator does YouTube every couple of weeks, every month, depending on what else is going on in the time. All the information about visiting, all the information about our different programs. Like I mentioned, we've got the school programs. We do webinars and lectures. Oh my goodness. Okay. And we do, sorry, I just looked at the time. Like I said, I can talk for hours. Webinars and lectures.
Yep, you're fine.
Yep. Video conferences are for adult groups, on-demand webinars, and then we've got a symposium that we do every 4 years. So our symposium is coming up in 2022. More information about the center itself, and then we've got a gift shop and support comments. So the website is a wonderful place. You can get that. We've got links to like recent news articles, lots of information about wolves. There's kids sections, so it's a fun place to just go and learn more about wolves. So that's about the International Wolf Center itself. Going on from there, the importance of wolves. So with wolves, let me pop up this one other thing here first, if I can find where I put it right there. So when you talk about the ecosystem and what would be the importance of a wolf in the ecosystem, for one thing, you've got, as the old saying goes, you've got the circle of life. You've got everything that creates and works with each other within the ecosystem. So one of the things that's mentioned a lot within the wolf world is the Trophic Cascade. And what it is in Britannica's terms is an ecological phenomenon triggered by the addition or removal of top predators and involving reciprocal changes in the relative populations of predator and prey through a food chain, which often results in dramatic changes in ecosystem structure and nutrient cycling. So some of the spots where this has been used, and you've got some scientists that will say the Trophic Cascade is a thing. You've got other scientists that will say it is not a thing. That's something that's kind of being in the discussions right now. But one of the places that we see the importance of wolves is out on Isle Royale. And Isle Royale has been studied since the late 50s. There have been many different scientists that have been out there through the years. They've been studying the moose and the wolf and how the moose and the wolf have intertwined with each other in sense. So what they believe is that the moose were out there on the island. Isle Royale is an island in Lake Superior. It's actually part of Michigan, even though it's only about 10 miles off of Minnesota's shoreline up by Grand Portage. And there have been moose there for many, 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 many years. And they believe that in the early 1900s, the first wolves crossed on an ice bridge. And an ice bridge is when Lake Superior actually freezes completely over, so something would be able to walk across it. So they were able to walk from Minnesota over to this island. And at that point then, the cycle started and the wolves found food, they found prey, so they started eating the moose. They usually go after more of the young moose or the disabled moose or the elderly moose. But it's been a cycle throughout the years. And if you look at this graph, you can even see the blue, as I'm pointing and you can't see me pointing, the blue is where the wolves are and the yellow is the moose. So as the wolf population tends to go down, the moose population goes up. Then as that wolf population starts to go back up from having more moose to eat, then the moose population starts to go down. And it's been this constant up and down. But with it being an island, there has not been a lot of new wolf blood that's come in. They had a spike in wolves quite a few years ago, and they didn't know why all of a sudden they had all this many more wolves. And one of the things they found out by doing scat studies, and scat is poop, scientific term for it. One of the things they did with the scat studies was they discovered that there was a new wolf DNA that had actually come in. So with this new wolf DNA, that then broadened the DNA that they had in the wolves out there, which then made the viability a little bit stronger and brought them back. So over the years then, they didn't see any more new DNA coming in. So around 2015, as you can see on the graph, the numbers went down to about 3. And these wolves were very connected in interrelations. So then it went down to 2. And what the national park system usually says is that because Isle Royale is a national park, what they usually state is that they're not going to interfere in any sense. So ecologically, they are allowing things to happen and go as they go. So they had a whole bunch of panels on it. They had a lot of different scientists speaking in. Some scientists believe they should just let it happen and let it go and let all the wolves die off. And if some more come across on another bridge, great and wonderful. But with things changing, we don't have as many bridges being created right now. So they tried to decide, do we step in and do we bring some wolves from other places? And so what they decided to do was they finally made the decision after several years of talking and discussing. They made the decision to try to bring 20 to 30 wolves in over a 3 to 5 year span. And 2019 is when they started bringing those wolves in. And they were going to bring them in from Minnesota, Ontario, Wisconsin, and Michigan. And then there was another scenario on another island in Lake Superior called Michipicoten, which is a Canadian island, where they had caribou that they didn't want to die, and they had wolves that had gotten on the island, and they were starting to decimate the caribou. So they moved those wolves from that island over to Isle Royale. But this is a good example. If they had allowed this to go, what the big discussion was if we don't have any more wolves on the island, we still have all the moose on the island. The moose are going to eat all of the foliage. They're going to eat all the small trees and everything. And as they eat that, then they're going to start starving to death because they're going to run out of food at some point. So do we want to bring the wolves back in to level out the level of moose? And then from there, will we be okay with rolling with things? So they decided to bring the wolves in. Since then, the moose has come back to a more even level. The foliage is starting to grow back better. I could not find any pictures of that, but Rolf Peterson was one of the main scientists out there, and John Vudovich is another one, and they've talked a lot about that stuff. Trying to see, there were some pictures. So that was the National Park System's website. This is actually the website for the Wolves and Moose of Isle Royale for the project, the Wolf Project. There's that same graph. Here's a very small picture, but it's a picture of a pack of wolves following a moose. And then we've just got the wolf footprints. And there was one more spot. Oh no, that was it for that one. So those are the two main websites to find out information about the wolves on Isle Royal. From there, in '95, we had the wolf reintroduction into Yellowstone. And this was one of Yellowstone National Park's actual reports they had in there, was wolf reintroduction changes ecosystem in Yellowstone. So here they are actually talking about the Trophic Cascade that happened. And what happened with them was that the wolves had been gone for so many years, and they state that the elk got kind of, I don't know what the right word is, they didn't move as often. They tended to stay more in the same area. So they, again, it was another one where they tried to decide what to do. In Minnesota, when the wolves got exported, I can never say that word, my apologies. When the wolves got taken out of the lower 48 states, they were still in Alaska, but they were no longer in the lower 48, other than in northern Minnesota. So northern Minnesota was the last place that we had wolves. So what happened then was, when in '73, when the Endangered Species Act happened, they became protected. And I have more information on that if we want to look at that at all later, but they became protected. And so then the wolves started coming back, and they started coming back naturally in Minnesota and Wisconsin and Michigan. But that was because we had the line in the northern space where there wasn't as many humans living. And so they came naturally down from Canada and around the Western Great Lakes area. So over in the Western states, there really wasn't as good of a line for them to come down. So they tried to decide if they wanted to reintroduce in Yellowstone, and Yellowstone was where they chose. So what's happened there since then is the elk have started moving more, because you've got your different wolf packs in the area. So with the wolf packs in the area, the elk have started moving more. And with the elk moving more, they're not eating on as much of the brush in one area, and the aspen and the willow have both started to come back. There's a whole bunch of areas where there was no foliage before, where they're starting to see a lot more foliage. And they're not 100% stating this is because of the wolves, but if you look at the line, there are a lot of scientists that are saying, okay, the wolves came back, the elk are starting to move more rather than staying in one area. Because of this, the elk are not eating as much off of one space. So now the different areas that they used to eat off are starting to grow back, which is then making more space for them to move and eat. And it's coming back to more of that natural ecosystem stand. So here, let's see. Nope, this one didn't have any pictures. So that's one of the Yellowstone sites. Here is one of the wolf packs in Yellowstone. And Yellowstone has some of the largest packs. But again, they don't have a lot of predators of their own. For pups, grizzly bears are predators for them. Polar bears would be predators for them, obviously not in Yellowstone, but in other areas. And so that's mostly with the pups. Wolves will kill wolves for territorial stance. It's not seen a lot, but it is seen, and it is one of those things where they are very much, this is my family and this is my space, and don't want other wolves in that space. But so yeah, so this is showing one of the packs bedding down that's in Yellowstone. And I don't think this one had any more pictures. No, but here is a map of the different Yellowstone packs. And this is from 2015, so this is 6 years old. But there is some overlay with some of the packs, but that's not space that they're usually in as often, they state. And it's usually one of those things where it's you don't see this much overlay other than when you've got a lot of packs in a smaller space. And that's that one. And then here with the reintroduction into Yellowstone this is the trucks coming in with the wolves. They brought wolves down from Canada. And then here's them releasing one of the wolves. They had them in spaces, they had them in fenced in areas where they weren't dealing with humans a lot. They would bring in food and that was about it. So here's one of the enclosed areas, and then they took them from these areas and then released them out into the wild. And then here now, one of the biggest things in Yellowstone to do is to go out and do wolf watching. It's one of the largest things that pulls people into Yellowstone. So then the other one that I'm going to mention that I didn't actually pull up any websites for is Voyager National Park. And in Voyager National Park, they are now doing a study where they are studying the wolves, and the wolves are actually eating beaver. And it was known that wolves would eat beaver before, but it wasn't seen as something as their main source of food. In Minnesota, their main source of food is the white-tailed deer. They will eat moose. They will eat beaver. They will eat snowshoe hare, rabbits, but it's not as common as taking down the large prey. But in National Voyager Park, they found that they are eating quite a few beaver, and they'll figure out where the beaver are going up to get their wood and then coming back down. And the interesting effect, they just recently released a paper talking about how the wolves are affecting the way the rivers are moving, because by killing the beaver, then the dams that the beaver built are starting to fall apart. With those dams falling apart, they would have created a lake, but that lake is now not being created because the water is moving. And this is one that I don't have as much information on, but it's really, really interesting. And you can look that up under the Voyager National Park Wolf Project. And they've got a lot of information there about the different ways that the wolves are affecting the beaver, and in that sense, then affecting the landscape. And then they are just freshly starting. They are also discovering that wolves are eating fish. And they're just starting to do some studies on how the wolves are hunting fish and what kind of effect that's having on stuff as well. So that's kind of what I have for the moment. Just figured I'd give you, like I say, very brief introduction to the Wolf Center itself, how the wolves make a difference in our ecosystem. And like I say, I could talk for hours, but from that small information, if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to try to start answering them.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jen. That was a lot, but thank you for giving us that. We have several questions that have come in through the text messaging, through the chat. Okay. So I'll just read some of these to you, and maybe you can respond. You know, I'm just going to go in order. There's a couple of the quick yes and no's up here at the front. It's from Connie. Are some white or are they gray?
Say that again.
Are some are some of the wolves white, or are they all like gray?
They're called gray wolves, but they come in many different colors. They can be white, they can be black, they can be gray, they can be brown, they can be reddish toned. So there's a lot of different color tones to them. But the name for them is the gray wolf.
Okay. Is there a hunting season for wolves in Minnesota as there is in Wisconsin?
Not at this point, and there's not one in Wisconsin at this point either. And that was something that I was going to go through a little bit later, but right now we're on the edge of them coming off of the endangered species list. I have a timeline, which I can show later if we have time, that shows them starting on the endangered species list in 74. They came off, went on, came off, went on, came off. So they came off in 2012, 11, 12. There was a hunting season in 2012, 2013, and 2014 in Minnesota. And then federal litigation came through. They went back on the endangered species list. And so there was no longer a hunting season then. They were supposed to come off again. There was stuff that went through in November. And the final rule was supposed to happen on January 4th. But I could not find anything that's been updated since the end of December. So I don't know where everything stands. All I know is that the last thing that was stated was they were supposed to come off the list at the beginning of January.
Jen, can I interject on that?
Go right ahead, Mom.
Right now, Minnesota is they're threatened, and they're being controlled what they call the DNR through the wolf management plan. And so that's where we are in Minnesota right now, if that's helpful.
And Minnesota wrote a wolf management plan in 2001, and that's where the hunt came from. They said that 5 years after they come off the list, that they would be able to be hunted. Well, they came off the list in 2007 and went back on, and then came off the list in 2011, which the legislature said was 5 years later, even though they had been on the list those 5 years. So they decided that they'd be able to do the hunt that first year they were off. So wow. So it's kind of that whole back and forth that the wolves have gone through many on and off throughout the years.
Okay.
And Minnesota right now,
so and maybe this
Minnesota right now is rewriting a new wolf plan, and they've got 20 people that are working on trying to rewrite that. So, okay, go ahead. Yeah. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Thank you for that. And maybe this will lead in a little bit more too. The question, why are the pups in captivity in the first place? Why have a wolf reserve?
There are a lot of different places that have wolves. There's places that do research, wolf research. There are places that are photo places where people can go and take photos of wolves. There are other educational facilities, and a lot of those facilities have wolves because there are laws that allow them to have them captive. So what we have decided to do was get wolves from places that are already approved by the government and already having wolves. So like we don't ever ask a place to have wolves for us. It's normally that they're going to have pups, and then we ask them if we can get pups. And the point behind us having wolves is it's a really good teaching point. When people come to the center, I could show you a ton of pictures online. I could show you videos online. I could show you books and stories and everything else. But when you walk through those doors and go up to those windows and see those wolves, I'm going to get sentimental on this one, sorry. It's a whole different world. You're actually seeing the live animal. And when you can see the animal live, it gives a different feeling for a person. And to see the excitement on the children to the adults, but especially how excited those kids get. It's, oh my goodness, it's alive. Oh my goodness, it's a real wolf. Oh my, and it's really fun to watch. But the point behind the ambassador wolves is to be ambassador for the wolves in the wild, so that the wolves in the wild are getting learned about within this section by these captive wolves at our facility anyway, and then giving more information from the excitement they build from seeing the wolves. We then try to do the programs and the movies and everything else and say, hey, here's more information about the wolves. And by giving that information to people, that's why we decided to be an educational facility and not take a side on whether you should kill a wolf or not kill a wolf, or take a side on whether they should be listed or delisted. It's we are here strictly to educate people and to give people more information about the wolf and more science-based information about the wolf, so that they can then make their own decision about the wolf.
Wonderful. Thank you. More education is always a good thing, right?
Exactly.
So thank you for doing that. Can you say a little bit more, speaking of education, can you say a little bit more about the lives of the wolves, like family structure and how that works?
Yeah. So wolves live in a pack. Like I said before, it's normally, years ago, they used to call them the alpha pair. And the same scientist that started using that term, Dr. Meach, who started the Wolf Center, years later, from the studies he did, said that alpha pair no longer fits. Alpha makes the thought process that these two top wolves have fought to the top of that pack. And they haven't really. What it is the pack is normally the two parents, and then it's their offspring. And it's usually, for surely, yearlings and pups. And then from there, it can be older wolves that have decided to stay with the pack and not disperse off with another group. Normally, they have their pups in the spring. They're usually born April, May, and the pups are usually, I want to say like 3 to 6 pups per litter normally, kind of approximately. And then the pups grow throughout the summer, and by July, so they're born at about a pound and a half. By July, they're usually around 35 pounds or so. By fall, they normally look like an adult wolf. So they usually, at that point, are ready to then move on with the pack. So the wolves are in their den site, usually in the spring, where they have the pups. So it's usually a dug hole or under a root or something like that. Then during the summertime, they go to what they call a rendezvous site, which is kind of a site where they kind of stay in the same space, and the pups are romping around and learning how to act and learning about wolf life and all that sort of stuff. And then the adults go off and hunt usually. And then by the fall, the pups are to a point where they can then travel with those adults, whether it be that they travel different spaces or can go hunting or whatever else. So they can then move with the pack.
Great. So this next question also has to do with a little bit of movement too. In terms of the size of your pens, one of our questions is about the size that you have. It says perhaps 1 acre seems a little small. Are there plans to increase the size, or why that 1 acre? Can you talk about like the size of space that wolves need?
Yeah, the 1.25 acres, trying to see if the live cams would probably show that the best. This one here, and this is only a small space. So if I pull this up, we've got our building over here on the right. This is the pond area that has no water in it. You can see the fence line here, but then the fence line goes way, way, way back. So, Mom, can you help me? How many football fields is the 1.25 acres? Was it 3 football fields that it was about the size of?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So it's a larger space than it seems. With them being captive, all the animals we get are born in captivity, so they have never been out in the wild and never had all that space. So they have enough space to move, they have enough space to run. They chase each other all the time. You've got some wolves that'll sleep back in the back area. They've got dens that they've dug, holes that they've dug. They've got quite a bit of space, and seeing it and thinking about 1.25 acres, it doesn't seem that large, but when you actually get up to the center and can see, in the wintertime, you can see the back fence. In the summertime, there is so much woods and so many trees that you can't even see the back fence. And it's what the USDA recommended. Like I say, the USDA, by their standards for a wolf captive space, we could have as many as 8 wolves in there. Right now, we only have 2. This summer, hopefully we'll be up to 5. And the most we have ever had in there is 6. So it's not like we have a pack of 20 in this small space.
And the government also tells you how many dens you have to have for how many wolves.
And they have to be able to walk in the den and do a full circle and be able to walk back out again. So if you can see off to the left here, is one of the dens we have created in the main enclosure. And then there's another one that's over off to the left further that we can't see in this picture.
That's great. Can we have a few more questions here. Can we, just for my own curiosity, can we pull up one of those other pictures with the wolves walking around as we're chatting? I love seeing them walk around.
Yep, there we go. Oh, there we go.
There it is. Oh, you're right there. Oh, look at them.
That's Grizzer.
That's great. Hey, a Grizzer. Look at that, enjoying it. So let's see, we got a few more questions here. How bad is the blowback from farmers and hunters?
It depends on the area and depends on the farmers and hunters. There are some groups that believe that the only good wolf is a dead wolf. You've got those people out there. You've got some people that are very good at working together with the wolves being in the space. At the symposium that we did, we had a shepherd from out west that came in, and he spoke about the different things, non-lethal work that he's doing in order to try to make the wolves not come near his herd. He actually moves his herd every day so that they don't come near him. So he's one of those that he's like, I'm in wolf space. I'm the one that has, even though the wolves came back after I came into this space, they were here originally. And he's like, so I have tried to find ways to work with them being there and me being there. We have some farmers up in northern Minnesota that are very, very willing to be like, okay, we need to find ways to work with the fact that the wolves are here. The DNR has also tried to find ways to work with those people though. And out west, it's not the DNRs, it's some of the different groups that are out there. And I can't think of their names, but so in Minnesota, it's the DNR that actually pays like compensation. So if a wolf, if there's a depredation or if there's a killing of livestock, then the DNR will come in and try to figure out, okay, was it a wolf that killed it? Was it a coyote that killed it? Was it something else that killed it? Did it die on its own and then get fed off by an animal later? And with the DNR figuring out that, if they figure out it was a wolf killed, then the DNR will pay that farmer or that rancher for the death of that animal. So it's been kind of a working relationship between some of the different federal agencies and the personal landowners to try to make the space work. And everybody's trying to come to a point where they can come to common ground with what's going to be the best way to deal with, we do have livestock workers in these areas, and we do have people with pets in these areas. And so it's one of those where it's that, okay, how can they come to that common ground to make these people still be able to live and make their livelihood, but still be able to have this wild animal in the space? And and you do have those farmers that are, you know, I don't want any wolves around, I don't want this, but it's, again, they've still got to go with the federal laws and go with what the laws are in the area. So.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And just, I know we have these media conceptions. All we see in the media of wolves are the attack packs that are going to get you when you're got a broken leg in the woods, and the wolves are coming for you and they're vicious. And then to see them just sort of hanging out, like chilling, walking around, it's adorable. It sort of gives you this other side of wolves.
And that's part of what we're trying to do. Oh, here we go. So I'm just going to mention what this is so you know. Like I said, we've got a wolf care team that goes in and takes care of the animals. So these are people from that team that work for the Wolf Center. And what she's doing right now is she's checking his legs to be sure that he doesn't have any growths on his legs, or doesn't have anything in his fur, or doesn't have anything that's bothering him, to kind of keep an eye on their health and their general health, to make sure that they're always doing okay. So we do, and they take the food into them. They go in and check on them every day, spend time with them every day to make sure that they're all doing okay, and to make sure that everything's okay health-wise. So that's what's going on here in this scenario.
Great. That's great. And just to see them, just petting them, and then just to see the size too.
Yeah.
The perspective there is staggering. That's probably another thing about them. They're big. They're big animals, and if they want to get you, that's a reason why people are scared of them.
Well, yep. And our wolves
so
have been
another question here.
Well, really quick, I just want to add to that one. Our wolves have been anywhere from 95 to 124 pounds. And the other thing with that fictionalized stuff, that's part of why the Wolf Center is around, is because we want to teach people the facts. You've got the big bad wolf in the Three Little Pigs. You've got the bad wolf in Red Riding Hood. You've got all of these scary stories, and in horror stories now too. You've got, you know, the wolves that are chasing people. And so it's one of those things where we wanted to get the facts out there so that people are seeing the facts and not all this scary stuff. There are scenarios where wolves have attacked humans. It's very few and far between. There was one in Minnesota quite a few years ago where someone was camping. They were sleeping outside of their tent at night, and a wolf came in and looked like they was going to go to bite them. They whacked it. When they whacked it, it ran away. But it's one of those things where this wolf was a habituated wolf, had been seen around the campsite before. When they found the wolf later, they figured out, I don't know how they figured it, but they figured out which wolf it was. And when they did that, they had information that they found out that the wolf actually had a bad jaw, so it couldn't kill an animal. So because of that, it was trying to find easier food, and it smelled food in the campsite. So they're not sure if that's why it went to the campsite or if it was, but it's one of those where most of the times, and there was a woman in Alaska that they believe was killed by wolves, but it was a foggy day. And what they believe is that the wolves couldn't see that it was a human. So what happened was the wolves attacked. By the time they attacked, she hadn't seen them coming. So she couldn't do anything like make herself big or make any sort of movement or anything like that. So it was, again, they believe, mistaken identity. There is a story from years ago of a hunter covering himself in buck scent and hiding in a brown, curling up in a brown thing. Wolf came up, sniffed him, thought it was a deer because it had the buck scent. As his head came up, the second the wolf saw that human face, it turned and ran. So there's comments that they do have an instinctual fear of humans. And that it's instinctual, built into them from the years of us being predators of the wolf.
Wow, thank you. So we are starting to get a little short on time here. We do have a few more questions that I'd like to get through, but just so we're aware, we got about 7 minutes. So what so what's the most it says, what is the most understood about wolves? But I'm guessing that's what's most misunderstood thing about wolves. What's the most common misconception?
Common misconception is if you walk down the woods and if a wolf sees you, it's going to come attack you. Like I said, they have an instinctual fear. They will hear you and smell you long before you will even know they're there. And the second they know you're there, they're going the other direction. Unless they're habituated to humans, or which means that they've gotten used to being around humans, or humans have fed them in their yards or things like that. So they've gotten a they've gotten used to humans being around. And if they're habituated to humans, they could be a little more dangerous because of the fact that they've lost that instinctual fear. But yes, the biggest misconception is that they will attack you on sight.
Okay. And now it says here, a large number were slaughtered about a month ago in Wisconsin. Are you aware of this?
That's not one I have heard of. Mom, do you know about that one?
Well, Wisconsin did have a wolf hunt, and they had limited the number of wolves that they could take, and they ended up taking more. But other than that, I don't know if I call it slaughter, but they did have a wolf hunt. So.
Okay.
Carol, do you want to say any more about that? Am I missing something from your question? Oh, Carol's probably left already. Oh,
Yeah.
well.
It was 62 wolves.
So, 62
it was
wolves?
62 wolves, and it happened like they overhunted almost immediately. It really was sort of a slaughter.
So how could that happen? How could hunters overhunt a species when they're told to not?
It wouldn't be legal for them to
Any
do it.
comments on that?
It's
Right.
It wouldn't be legal for them to do it. Wisconsin has very different rules and laws than Minnesota does. And I don't know as much about their laws. I know that they can use dogs in their hunts, where you cannot do that in Minnesota. Or they can use dogs in their bear hunts. But it's one of the things where they have a whole different set of rules. But even in Minnesota, with a couple of the years that we had hunts, you're supposed to take your tag and go hunt the wolf, and then come back and let it be known that you have this tag, like it is with any other hunt that we have. And so if it's one of those things where the people didn't come back and turn in their numbers immediately, or if they ended up hunting more than they should have, which is always a possibility, although I don't know why, I can't imagine anybody would claim that, because that is against the law. But it's one of those things where there are possibilities between the time that the hunt happens to the time they turn their numbers in, that there could be more that get killed, yes. And the DNR tries to keep that to the limit, and they try to keep on top of that, but that's again in their hands how they deal with all of that.
Sure. Okay. So last question in our last few minutes here. Ken says that the last winter he found one set of wolf tracks on a trail behind their cabin at Castle Danger. And he always thought that wolves hunted in pack. How unusual is it for that lone wolf to be in an area like that?
Not unusual at all. And there could be more than one wolf. Wolves do walk in a straight line, and they do walk one behind the other. So there's the possibility that there was more than one with it and that wasn't noticed. But even in that case, there are a lot of lone wolves. Like I said, they start in the family pack. And if they decide that they don't want to be in that family pack any longer, whether it be that they have a more dominant behavior and want to take that dominant behavior out to another group, whether it be that they want to find another wolf to breed with and create a family with, there's a lot of different reasons why they leave. But there are a lot of wolves that do leave. They have scenarios where wolves in the Central Forest, which is just east of La Crosse in Wisconsin, have actually walked over into Minnesota down by Rochester. And they have found single wolves down by Rochester, Minnesota. And wolves are known to walk hundreds of miles in a day when they're looking for another group or looking for another territory. So it is very possible that there was a single wolf walking through. But even in a pack, they're not always together. Some wolves will go off in different areas of their territory at different times. You'll have a wolf that might walk the perimeter to make sure there aren't any other wolves in the area. So there are times even when they're living their pack life that they will be singular in their space.
Interesting. Oh, yes, thanks, Mike. So we are about out of time. I have posted some links into the chat of the Wolf Sanctuary website, as well as the Isle Royal Wolf website that she spoke of. Did I spell that wrong? Yeah, I probably spelled that wrong. So those are in there if you want some more information about that. We have just a couple more minutes. Any last final lingering questions? Opening back up. If you don't have your video on, I can't see you waving if you're waving. Okay, not seeing any. I'll go ahead.
Whoops.
Stop sharing there.
Oh, I was just gonna.
I just stopped your
That
sharing.
works. I see that.
Yeah, I gotcha. Gotcha. Okay, so that is, let's see, let's go back to here. So, okay, well, thank you so much, Jen. You know, we love to, I thank you for your work in education and continuing to educate people about wolves. Education is one of our favorite things here at St. Luke. And so not only just about like, you know, hard like coronavirus and politics and things that are hard to educate about, but some of our natural world is always nice to have some education about too. So really appreciate you coming out, taking the time, Betty. Thank you for also joining us today and lending your expertise. Can we get one of these for our presenters? All of your mics are off, so they can't hear you, but they can see you.
And thank you for your interest. It's wonderful.
Thank you, Jen. Any final words, last things that you want to leave folks with? Calls, how to get involved, how to get more information, anything like that?
Like I said, it's the International Wolf Center's website is wolf.org. And our main facility is up in Ely, but we do have our executive director and our financials and stuff like that are down here in the cities. So we do have an office down here in the cities, and we do a lot of education and a lot of volunteer work down here. So if there is any interest in any volunteer time, whether it be helping with articles, whether it be helping at booths, whether it be any of that, we have different opportunities. Right now with COVID, it's a little slower, but those opportunities are out there, and all that information is on the website.
Okay, so if folks are interested in getting involved or volunteering, just go to the website wolf.org. Is that right? Okay,
yep.
Great. And are there any pressing like wolf needs? Like, do the wolves need anything right now? Like, is there a pressing concern that some advocacy could help for? Are you pretty kind of maintaining right now?
Like I say, we're an education facility, so we don't advocate for the wolf in that sense. So we don't take a stance either way with any of that. We are here for the survival of wolves, but we are not an advocacy group. So it's a matter of the people choosing what they want to do and how they want to help. Just getting more information is a wonderful, wonderful way to help the wolves. Knowing more about the truth about the wolf and the actual facts about the wolves is a wonderful way to help them, because then all those misconceptions and those old myths are no longer out there.
Nice, great. Well, thank you. And it sounds like if folks want any more information, they can reach out to you at wolf.org. Yes, from Ben, thank you for a very informative session. You two are very knowledgeable. We appreciate your experience and your time and dedication with these wolves and sharing, because they're just so cute. So thank you for sharing them with us today.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you.